a.m. It's 2 in the morning on the East Coast of the United States. I have no idea what time it is down and under, but it is time for Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Hello and welcome to Shiny Side Out with...
I think it's my turn, Dave.
And Mecky. I hope I'm not talking over the music. Broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on Hello Revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio, so jump in the chat room if you can. This is show number 338, 830 and 300, I want to say. And we're going to talk about Immortality. I was going to talk about E8, but that is a lot more complex, and I'm not sure we can do it justice. So we're still working on that. We're still working on it. It's all good. It's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a great tabletop digital radio. If you missed the largest show, which I did, today is Father's Day in Australia, and I did spend some time with my children, as you do, and some people came over for breakfast, all good, or turned into brunch, lunch, and then not really early dinner yet, but sorry, I did miss it. And now, if you did miss it, though, it only costs $5.95 a month, that's dollars, to access the Freedom Slips archives, and you can just go there and check out all of her shows, all of everybody's shows that is broadcasting on this platform, in fact. So I think it's money worthwhile, and she brings, every week, she's got amazing guests. I think there's a guest every week. And she interviews them in some really awesome stuff. I don't know, Dave, did you get a chance to listen to her?
Yeah, I did. Today she had on Russ Tanner, and they were talking about geoengineering, but it went all the way through geoengineering into the what's it called? The Schumann resonance.
Oh, okay, the Schumann frequency. Gotcha.
And what they might possibly be using it for.
Interesting. You see, that's what you missed. That's what you missed. So you don't miss it again. Go and either listen to it. That's good. It's late. I get it. It's actually very late for you guys, or early, depending on which side of the bed you're sitting. But I know it's an inconvenient time, and certainly our show might be for a lot of listeners in the States as well. We know it's being replayed, but if you missed the replay, go to the archives. This is where the archives are good, right? Because you can get shows that might be a little inconvenient for you time-wise. Now, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of our lands. For me, it is the Daruk people, and for Dave,
the Dark and Young.
And we would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. It's not an empty thing we say. We mean it. We have great respect, and as far as we know, happy for someone to tell us otherwise, it is the oldest continuous living culture on the planet. So a lot of the stories of the Dreamtime and in general oral traditions go back tens of thousands of years. That's a long time. That's longer than our written record. That's longer than most of our oral traditions as well. So it's something that we should definitely acknowledge and be cognizant of. So today, as I said, we were going to talk about E8. E8 being the what's the best word to describe it? It's a mathematical construct to explain or bring into unison all theories in physics. It's an elegant little thing. It's certainly not without its problems, and there are certainly people that are detractors. But it's a very interesting model. We're not going to talk about that. We're not. Well, I have the show notes. It's only 7 or so pages. There's some really amazing graphics as well with it, which I found online. Outlining how it actually overlays the graphic of this model overlays with the Tree of Life, the Kabbalah, the Star of David, and a whole bunch of other things. So it's actually really amazing stuff. I like to. I know. Can I just say I want to read one sentence for you, and then I'll let it be. This is part of the show notes. So here we go. In the standard model of particle physics, each different kind of elementary particle has 4 different charges, corresponding to twists along directions of 4-dimensional maximal torus in the 12-dimensional standard model Lie group. SU in brackets 3 times SU in brackets 2 times U in brackets 1. The 2 strong color charges, GC and GT, correspond to twists along directions in the 2-dimensional maximal torus of the 8-dimensional SU3 Lie group of the strong interaction. Yeah. Crickets. So I need to find a way to make this more digestible. I need to find a way to make it more relevant. I found a few articles, but I don't want to lose the science, right? So because the science is amazing, and the pictures. I only sent it to Dave now. The pictures will form part of our show as well. If you're watching it on YouTube, we'll have it there for you. So this is not this show. This is not that show. This show is about immortality. This was show number 6. No, show number 156, and now show number 338. Greatly expanded. We now have 26 A4 pages of show notes, which will take a little while to get through. But there's a lot more information on the telomeres. We talked about that. There's a lot more information on the jellyfish. We mentioned a few times in the past. More information on the count of Saint-Germain, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff in here as well. So it's a greatly expanded show if you've listened to show number 6 and show number 156. Okay, so we hope that you will enjoy it. It really is fascinating, and you know what, Dave? I'll tell you what.
What is it?
Immortality, my friend, is just around the corner, and there's this one article here which is part of the show notes, which we will tell you all about what Google is doing in this space. That's right, Google. All right, but there are others as well. We also talk about a few historical immortal beings. There's some references to things we mentioned in the past, but I think it's fascinating stuff. I hope you enjoy it. Dave, my friend, how has your week been?
Great. Except, in the news, I see so much, and there's 5 topics that I'm going to talk about, and we'll talk about, Mackie, and I require your input on them as well. And
of course,
I'll tip them first, and then you can wait till we get to them, right? So, the Venezuela economy, the petro yuan, the Pentagon, trade war with China, and the drought. So the first one, let's touch on, is the Venezuelan economy. And this is a tough issue for the Venezuelans because, like we saw in South Africa, where was it? Where Mugabe was the leader?
Zimbabwe.
Okay, so we've seen in the past, dollar notes, for instance, with so many zeros that you can't fit any more on. You'd have to go 2 rows of zeros. So it's just been announced that that was initially in about April, they thought they'd be hitting 1,000,000% inflation around about the end of the year. It's come early. Christmas has come early for the Venezuelans, and it's out of control. So we were talking about earlier that you might be able to change the currency and arrest it if you've taken other controls. Mackie, what are your thoughts? And I know we touched on this last week, so it's a quick topic today.
Oh, my thoughts on my thoughts. Look, I'm reminded of bad old times. I think we discussed this as well, right?
We did.
Massive currency deflation. So I don't want to go over that ground again. But look, I think maybe it was something we didn't mention. We need to mention it. Maybe mention it now. Take a step back and realize that all our currency constructs are completely made up.
Fiat currencies.
Okay? Fiat currencies, and fiat just means Yeah, I agree. I say this. So we say it's so we all agree. It's that's what it is, and again, completely made up. So my suggestion is to understand that and internalize it and maybe act accordingly. Should we bring back a standard? Yeah, I think that would be better. Tying the currency to something tangible would certainly help us in the long term. It would definitely help us in the medium term. Wouldn't do much in the short term, but over time, having a currency that is meaningful in and of itself would certainly be a good thing, because we would no longer be, well, not as much anyway, be subject to inflation, hyperinflation, and other factors. Interestingly enough, if you saw this, Dave, Donald Trump, he wants to get out of the WTO, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm just waiting what he's going to say about the World Bank. I heard this on the radio the other day. We have for the first time since World War II, we have a president of the United States, the widely acknowledged leader of the free world, as they like to call it, who doesn't want to be the leader of the free world. I want to get out of NATO. I want to get out of the Trans-Pacific Agreement. Mm-hmm. I want to get out of the World Trade Organization. I don't like the World Bank either. Okay, I like North Korea. We're hanging out. Okay, mm-hmm. Putin is a buddy. We're hanging out too. We're all hanging out on my yacht. It's all good. What? What's wrong with that? Shut up. You're fake news. You're fake.
So.
Oh, whatever.
So I know, right? And so the point of view from America in the world arena is a contraction away from all of these, what were put in place, these controls, and you can call them controls. These were bargaining and control, what's the word I'm looking for? Like councils to ensure that everyone was, lockstep, doing the right thing, behaving properly, like the police. Yeah? But that didn't happen. And I think he might have seen that and he's trying to pull it away. I don't know what the true motive is. Maybe part of making America great again is to look at your core values, come back to the essentials, and then build it out again. But in the meantime, all this is happening. Remember, Iran, Meki, you're not allowed to, America says you can't use the American dollar anymore for the purchase of oil, for petrol, the petrodollar.
Yep.
That kick-on effect has now escalated. Now, back in April of this year, the petro yuan was a myth, a fantasy, unicorns. The people around the world were saying, well, it's preposterous, it's never going to happen. Well, it's happened. And this change of connecting the currency, the Chinese currency, to the petrol exchange, and so that no longer will China have to exchange dollars into US dollars to buy petrol, right, or gasoline, or oil, for that matter. Now the US dollar will no longer be bought and sold in the same quantity. Thinking about how much quantity, that's quite something. So you can see how this affects it, right? But at the same time, the Pentagon is warning that China has transformed its military to fight and win wars. Meki, what an extraordinary thing that is.
I know.
Not just to train to fight in a war, but to win it. Hang on, isn't that everybody's goal? It's not just a stalemate, right? We're just going to stalemate with you and we're all going to be happy, right? No. So this is part of that polarization that I see, where people are saying, okay, you've got to take one side or another. You either take the US's side or you take China's side on this. And the same people talking about the Pentagon and, claiming that China's ramped up its military, it's ready to fight, It's not only ready to fight, it's ready to win. They're talking about the trade war now is set to ratchet up between the US and China. So pulling yourself out of all of these controls means that you have your own voice. Is that really what America's trying to do? They're trying to create their own standard and not this quasi council standard that really no one got any benefit out of, or maybe America was never bargained into correctly in the first place. Because you've got to consider America's position now, I suppose, is, you start looking at these agreements and you go, hang on, you mean the country can get sued if we cancel an exploration license for mining by the company? What? Because don't forget, that's happened in the past. So what is all this rhetoric? Where's it coming from? And what is in store for all of us?
Look, I think what and you and I are about the same age, so we grew up in a similar world. Mm-hmm. We're used to bipolar politics. You got the Soviet bloc on the one side and the United States and their allies on the other. That's the world Dave and I and a lot of our listeners grew up in. All right, a very clear world, two sides. That's easy. That world is gone. Okay, that world disappeared very quickly in the new millennium. Disappeared very, very fast after 9/11, and then again in the recent years. It's really astounding to see this change. So we no longer polarized. So the old powers don't exist anymore per se. I mean, America, you could argue, is still that power. What we have are emerging powers or power blocks, right? We have the European Union emerging, or was emerging as a strong economy. It still is the largest economy, taken as a whole in the world. Mm-hmm. The European Union, it still is. But you have powers like China emerging, Russia and its allies, not the Soviet Union, but Russia. Okay, America is actively trying to get out of the international arena, more or less, right? Just not interested that much anymore. It reminds me of what it was like under Monroe, even Wilson, back in the day. Mm-hmm. It's more than 100 years now, right? So, because America never joined the League of Nations after World War One. Okay, United Nations these days, look. It's an organization. It's there. It's good, but it doesn't really do terribly much. That is of consequence. And if the power players don't agree with what it's doing, then nothing gets done. But it is no longer a bipolar world. It is no longer a world that is split in two. It's just this India, you could argue, is emerging as well. And look at this to some extent. I don't think it will ever have the internal strength or unity that China has, and that's a problem. But it certainly is an economic power, and then certainly, we all are dealing with Indian companies all over the world in various shapes or forms. Other nations are emerging as well. You've got the Southeast Asian tigers, if you will. Vietnam, Indonesia, and so forth. Yeah, then Brazil is emerging as a strong economic force. Notwithstanding the troubles in Venezuela that Dave is going to talk about in a second. So look, it is no longer that world, and therefore it is difficult to understand what's in store. It's difficult to make predictions. With the current president, look, make no mistake, the United States still has a lot of power, and it's very important what they do, globally speaking, right? I don't know. I honestly don't know what's next. Some of the things that have been happening, I thought, yeah, that could happen. Other things I was surprised by. Certainly the relationship with North Korea is interesting. Now, there's also talk now of in fact, the only person talking about it is Donald Trump himself. He says, well, if I'm impeached, the economy will crash. No one else is talking about impeaching him. He's just saying, if you do it, you better watch out. The economy is going to crash. But it's a definite possibility. There's a lot of. I've never seen. Even in Australia, even in Israel, I've never seen the government change so quickly. When I say the government, I'm talking about the I guess the circle around the president changing so rapidly, so much, right? So it's a fast change, but it's also the volume of change. There's so many changes in his administration there, right? So look, yeah, Dave, I think it's very difficult to put your finger on what's happening. It's a similar chaos that was, I guess, present prior to World War One. Of course, back then it was probably more confined to the European nations, right? And today we're actually having a global society and a global political system, if you will, that we have to take into consideration. But I think it is just as complex, if not more so, than it was back then. And of course, that didn't lead to anything good. But on the other hand, you have massive scientific progress, and that always is a game changer, right? We are so from the point of view of politics, it's volatile. We don't know what's going on. But from the point of view of technology and science, it is also volatile. We don't know what's going on. What's going to be the next big breakthrough, right? I mean, we're looking at. I mean, the world could change on a dime. Tomorrow, it could be a different world. We're talking about, in a longer term, I guess, about the end of the internal combustion engine. That's something it's been driving us. I guess pun intended. Right for the last 120 years, give or take, right? And I mean, if you look at our civilization on the planet, it is completely built around cars. We are more so than the Romans. We are builders of roads, but we are more so builders of parking spaces. Okay, we're builders of all things to do with cars, petrol stations, repair workshops. That's, I mean, if anybody from outer space comes, the key feature of our civilization is internal combustion vehicles. Millions and millions and millions and millions of them on the planet, and more every year. More every year. We don't realize it because we're right in it. But if you go out into the city or wherever you are in your hometown, and walk around on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, whatever the most quiet time is where you are, and you look around, it's streets, empty streets, but it's streets, not made for walking, they're made for driving. And there's a lot of them, right? And if you don't have the cars in it, it all seems to be sort of wrong. You know, oh, wow, look at all these roads, no cars in it.
Wow, you had a moment this morning.
Huh? Yeah, no, right?
Yeah. Hey, Becky, you are so right. You are so right. And what is it that's driving that? Another pun. What's driving the car? It's oil.
100%. 100%.
And it'll turn, if we're lucky enough, it'll turn to electricity at some point. Because the first car ever made was electric, you know that, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And it was... That just seems so stupid. Imagine what we'd have today if they'd continued the development of the electric motor for automobiles over 100 years. Wow. I can only imagine where we'd be today. Because the evolution of the internal combustion engine has come so far that now we're getting... And they would think that the guy who made the first... internal combustion engine would be beside himself to see what we've done to it. It's sort of like it's like a rocket engine to what the Russian high lift engine is now, right? Because it's still the best engine on the planet. It was the one that was developed by the Russians during the space race. It's a huge turbojet thing. It was awesome, and it's what's used today by all of the high lift rockets. So you've got to. Something is crazy in our environment. Now, Mackie, I always theorized that once the car was no longer needed, right, because you just had, either anti-gravity or whatever, you wouldn't need roads anymore, and then they'd be consumed or turned back to parkland or something, right?
Well, the thing is, it takes a lot to keep to upkeep roads. There's a lot of maintenance involved, right? And then you have to resurface them. You have to just keep the weed off it. You're right. if roads became unnecessary at one point, some of them might be pedestrian areas. You're right; they might be reclaimed in the parkland, but most of them would just fall into disrepair. Right? It's just how they could probably still they're probably still serviceable, but certainly nowhere to the standard. And you know what? They would disappear very, very quickly because grass and weeds, they grow very quickly. As soon as a little bit of dirt or earth, drifts onto the road, maybe even cracks appear. With winter, summer, there's cracks. The asphalt.
Just no maintenance anymore. That's right.
Yeah, no maintenance. It'll. I reckon the road network could become invisible. Within I don't know 20, 30 years, right?
Absolutely, 30 years completely. Yeah. So, unless of course, and this is the worst segue ever, unless of course we all end up in drought.
Yeah, because then we need roads to transport the water.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got to tell you about. And we've mentioned this a couple of times, but we are in a serious drought in Australia. And the drought is so prolific that we're shipping what little resources there are from the other side of the continent, and they're becoming more and more expensive, and the farmers are doing it harder and harder and harder. And it's really tough. There's no feed, there's no water, and no water means no feed, so we're having to bring hay in from Perth, for instance. However, it's not only affecting the farmers, and the drought, the little few millimetres of rain we've had in the last month, or going back for 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, is actually the driest we've had. And the dam levels that we all, the whole of the Sydney Basin lives from, it's the water source that we consume. We shower, flush the toilets, wash our clothes in it where we can. The last drought we had 18 years ago ended with policies being put in place, and some of those were hard surface runoff needs to be stored and drained slowly back into the infrastructure, and the other is you can capture rainwater to flush toilets and do your washing, for instance. And they became, nicely shaped, the water capture devices that you can have down the side of your house that would fit in beneath the eave, or they can be the side wall of your house, jurisdictional. Very nice policies, low flow shower heads, so you're not wasting all that water having a shower. It's almost like having a shower in an atomized spray can. There's almost no water pressure coming out of them at all. It's almost atomized. It's terrible. However, the government, because there was no drinking water, decided to, I don't know how many, it was $500 million or something it was for a desalination plant, and they put one in, and as soon as it rained, they sold it. Our state government sold it to a private company, and it's actually fallen into disrepair because it's not been used. And the private company who's bought it, let's call it a private operator, they've not been doing the maintenance on it. And now the government said, hey, that thing we sold you, can we have some water from it? And they go, oh, it's not working. Wait, what do you mean it's not working? I'm paraphrasing, of course. And it's like, well, we never thought you'd want it, so we haven't done anything with it. But you've got a company. Yeah, it's a great tax dodge, having a company with this thing depreciating every day. Awesome, right? All the investors, they're loving this. But can we have some water? Oh, you really want me to fix it? Yeah, can you fix it? Well, it's going to take ages. And at the moment, the water levels are dangerously low. In fact, if you go onto whatever website it is, Warragamba Dam website, you'll find that they're too low. They're expecting no rain, and we're going to go into summer. It's going to be no rain, and we're going to be relying on this desalination plant, which can only, it hasn't got a capacity to supply water to everybody in Sydney. Good luck with that. Now we're seeing the big bottlers, what's it, Nestle, Coca-Cola, and there's others, private firms now, which have either been just simply selling us our own bottled water back to us for, 7,000% cost on it, and it's the same water that you can get out of your taps. Or they've been drilling down and taking waters from the aquifers beneath the ground, and they've had a permit to do it for free and sell us water they've just gained for free entirely and selling it. There's no percentage increase from zero, right? That's crazy. So they're using all our water to sell back to us, and we've run out of water. And the desal plant won't be ready, apparently. Meki, it's a shambles, right?
More than a shambles, it's actually a very dangerous scenario. I remember we had water restrictions a few years ago in Sydney.
They're just about
because
to turn them back on again.
Warragamba was very low. Go on.
They're just about to turn the water restrictions back on again.
Well, that's the thing, right? So we are a first world nation by all reports. That's what people tell me.
Someone's measurement.
You wouldn't know it by our political system, but now our water is at risk. And not only that, if we are having a very hot summer, which I fear we may, so water is a problem. Tick. That's actually the most severe problem, probably. So my grass is going to die. We won't be able to water our lawns, wash our cars, and whatnot. I mean, fair enough. And it'll become a problem when they start turning water off. I remember going to Istanbul in Turkey in my childhood on holidays. And I remember rolling brownouts as well as rolling water outages. So they're announced. So you're living in this area of Istanbul, you're going to get water from 11 until 2, and then not. And so on, right? This could happen here. Now, the other one that worries me, though, of course, which is related to the heat, is the strain on our electricity supply here in Sydney specifically. Millions and millions of people, right? If everybody has got the air conditioning running, everybody is using the washing machine or whatever else they're doing, that would put a huge strain on our system. And I don't know if it is good enough to withstand that, because I mean, wherever I look, Dave, wherever I look in Sydney, I see high rises going up. These are apartment buildings. So. Yep. Yesterday, I was. This is topical. I was driving through Epping. Epping is a suburb of Sydney.
Yeah, I used to live there.
Right, and that used to be a suburb of family homes. Like you have like a family home on a plot of land, and that's pretty much the character of the suburb. and even on the major roads, no high rises, no apartment buildings. And then over the last, I want to say 3-4 years, 5 years even. These apartment buildings are just like mushrooms, springing up overnight. Not quite, but very quickly. And one road, the main road into Epping from the west that I took, and then that drives through Epping, in fact, which was all lined by family homes, left and right, and then into the bushland as well. It's all apartment buildings now, all of it. And I go, wow. And so there's a variety of issues with that, of course, but the key problem for me, especially coming into a hot summer, is all of a sudden where a family was consuming air conditioning in a home with, I want to say, let's say 4 or 5, maybe 3 bedrooms, whatever it might have been, right? And maybe, I want to say, a maximum of 5 people living there. And in the footprint of where there were 4 family houses with a rough, it's an average population of 20 people, right? So 20 people in the footprint of that particular area, there's now 200 or 300 people or more. So a 10, 20, maybe 30-fold increase potentially of consumption, energy consumption. I hope you understand where I'm going with this, right? So it's actually the changing topography, the changing density. 100%. That is happening in Sydney is going to put, I think, an unprecedented load onto our electricity supply. Couple that with water shortages, and we might as well be living soon enough in the third world country. Because, yes, Europe was getting hot, and Europe is not really used to it because of the air conditioning, I get it, right? But the temperatures were just approaching 40, right? Might have been 40 here and there for a little bit. For us, that's the starting point.
Yep.
Okay. So 40 for us is, I mean, we had hot summers, and 40 used to be unusual, but it happened, right? And now we're up to 46, 47. Okay, and if we have it over several days, that's a lot of heat. That's a lot of heat.
I predict electricity.
Yeah, and then we've got massive shopping centers as well, because guess what? Whenever we are opening up a new suburb, they're building a shopping center. And what does the shopping center have? Air conditioning for the entire thing, like like your malls in the States. So look, Dave, I think we are. I hope we're going to be okay, but I know that we're not very good at forward planning here in Sydney, maybe in Australia in general. So that's really an issue.
I think it's an issue, and it's focused on the short-term political views because of their short terms that they survive through. Yeah, so the first year is trying to do some promises that got them in power. The second year is do whatever they want, and then the third or the last years is gift giving, and trying to stay out of trouble, because none of them seem to be able to do that latter one, the stay out of trouble. One of our front benchers in politics let through an au pair, a babysitter, like a nanny, right?
French. She was French.
French nanny, because she was caught up because of visa. They were going to reject her entry into the country, and he said, yeah, sure, let him in. But the person that she was going to be working for had given $150,000 towards the party, and she was just green lighted straight through. That's it. She's right. She can go through, like released on bail kind of thing, where the money that was actually given to the political party to approve her to get in. What? Now that man could have been our prime minister, but I think they were keeping the knowledge of this event under the table, kept it in a drawer, waiting for him to become prime minister. And then since he didn't, because you didn't, you say, oh no, and they made it public. This is the kind of, the dirt that they love to bring up. Now, I think it's unfortunate that someone coming here was stopped at all on any kind of visa. I think that's an unfortunate thing. Yeah, we don't have much water. Yeah, it gets really hot, and we don't have much power either. But, if you're willing to put up with that and our way of life, then why not? Why not be the babysitter of some wealthy person? Yeah? Why not? I mean, what do I care? I don't actually care. I'm sorry that she got held up in such a way, right? With a perfectly good visa. But is this what we're protecting?
Yes, it is.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Because the US is even harder to get into than Australia. Australia is reasonably difficult, right? But if you're in the US, and you have a love letter of someone that you might want to, have like a reunion with, they can turn you around at the border, going, "Oh, we think you're gonna run. You're gonna get in here, you're gonna skip your visa and just go and live happily ever after." You're not allowed to do that. Not in our country, you're not, right? So what have we done wrong? Why are we so precious about our way of life if we're not letting anyone else enjoy it either?
Yeah. Okay, so you want the answer?
Yeah. There's a short answer with an if and a long answer with a but, right?
That's right. So, look, I'll give you the medium version. Okay, so look, essentially, we're focusing on these things because they're easy to deal with. They're easy. That's a problem that's easily defined and easily understood. Immigration, I'm talking about, right? Because if you're dealing with that, the baby over border affair and all that other stuff, right? All of a sudden, everything else is completely off the news cycle. It's gone. I'm focusing on this. Gone. Boom. Done. Right. I can give people something they can actually get into and have an opinion about. Not that their opinion matters. God forbid, right? Your opinion. Tell me what you think. Oh, great. Now I can go on ignoring it. Because they will do what they want anyway. The vast majority of Australians wants to close down the detention centers. That's a fact. Should we process people in the right way? 100%. Absolutely. We shouldn't just see, there are two ways of doing things, the right way and the wrong way. What Germany did a couple of years ago with Syria was wrong. You can't just, without any controls, have 1 million people come into your country. That's foolish.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact,
foolish.
I have to, I need to make a little detour and tell you guys a story, which is actually what happened. I read it recently online in a German newspaper, I think. I can't remember. Anyway, there was a Yazidi girl Now, the Yazidi are a minority in Syria, and they were severely treated by the ISIS caliphate. Okay, so the girls were married off to the ISIS Islamic soldiers and whatnot. So one of the Yazidi girls made it to Germany and, thought she got away from it all, only to see her forced husband, one of the ISIS fighters, cross the road, and she froze and whatnot. So what did happen? And this will happen if you've got 1 million people coming in all at once without much of a check. A lot of the ISIS fighters actually made it into Germany as well. Yeah, I'm not stoking any hate mongering or fear. I'm just telling you what it is, right? So we need to do the right thing. So anybody that is in detention, and we're talking hundreds of people, not thousands, hundreds. I think we could process them fairly quickly if we had a functioning government that would care about doing its job. There was an ad, Dave. You must have seen it. It was actually a comedy. It wasn't an ad. It was a comedy routine. I saw it on Facebook. Might have seen it somewhere else, and it was put out by Australian comedians. And they were just looking at or interviewing these regular Australians. Now they might have just been actors. Most of them probably were. And they're saying, "Oh, look, I come into the office. I don't really like my job, but you know what? I just go on and get my job done." And another guy was a street worker, like a construction worker, and other people were doing other jobs. They're all just saying, "Look, we're just getting on doing our jobs. We don't love our jobs, but you know what? Someone has to do them, right?" And they turned around and as a group shot, "Why don't you," meaning the politicians, "do your effing job as well? just do your effing job." Yeah. All right? Because what they didn't do was their job. They were so consumed with infighting and bickering and wrangling for position within their party that the business of Australia was completely neglected. In fact, there was no. I'm a sad guy. I listen to the parliamentary radio when I go to work in the morning. And for a couple of days, there was no broadcast from there. It was just news because they weren't sitting. They were not sitting. They weren't making any decisions. They weren't passing laws. They weren't, educating me with their lively debates. None of that. So you have to understand, and this is probably for our overseas listeners, in Australia, we do not elect our representatives directly, meaning I'm talking about the Prime Minister, or I guess it's the President for you as an equivalent. We put into power a party. So we vote for people. You can vote for people, but for the most part, it's divided into the Labour camp and Liberals and Nationals together as a coalition, and you vote for the party more or less. Now, because you didn't vote for the person, the party can decide to change their leadership. Mm-hmm. So let's say the Labour Party wins, for argument's sake, right? And they put Joe Smith in as Prime Minister. So he's also the leader of the Labour Party, by the way, at that point. But 1 year into the thing, they're thinking, you know what, he's not the right guy, he's not helping me out, and we don't think we can win the next election with him in power, so yeah, we don't want him anymore. Boom, off he goes. And someone else is put in his place. Now, if it was just the party leadership, who cares? Who cares? But because they also have the government, they're also getting rid of the Prime Minister and putting in the new Prime Minister. And what usually happens is the cabinet changes. So all the ministers are shuffled around. Some leave, some go. Some are asked to go, and others, new ones come in.
And some are reassigned to new duties.
Now, bear in mind, there was no election at any point. Okay? So you don't know. I mean, you voted, most of the time you vote for the guy that's in charge, right? Or the girl for that matter. Because you're thinking, oh yeah, I can trust that person. That person is gone now. You don't really know necessarily who the new person is they're putting in. You don't really know what their policies are going to be like, right? They talk a good game, but you don't know. And you didn't vote for them, but there they are, in power. I don't know if any of you ever watched House of Cards with the now disgraced Kevin Spacey. I still like him as an actor. I respect his work as an actor. I make no apologies for that. What he did in his private life, I don't know. Right, but I do like the work that he did, and he did really good work in that particular TV show. And he was never elected, and he makes a point of it, right? So he replaces the president, and he said, "Here I am, and I'm 2 steps away from the most powerful position in the world, And I've never been elected by anyone to anything. And I think that makes a wonderful point, I think, about democracy in general, and how our democratic systems, because these are all different, right, have become such bureaucracies and self-serving institutions that they're actually completely meaningless when it comes to representing the will of the people. Us. Completely meaningless. It doesn't matter. In fact, it doesn't actually matter if you vote or not. In Australia, we have to vote, we have to vote. Otherwise, we have to pay a fine or even go to jail. But give me a choice then. No, I wanted to do that. I wanted to, put a political party up there and all that, only to find out in this whole hoopla recently that I can't even sit in parliament because I hold a dual citizenship, right? I got German and Australian citizenship.
There you go. Denounce one.
Yeah, look, but even then, I could get it back. Could get it back. That's bad. And sometimes you don't even know if you have it. I mean, there are a lot of politicians caught out, I believe, honestly caught out, where they didn't realize that they could have or had a second citizenship if their parents were, I don't know, let's say New Zealanders or British or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I think the provision in the law are completely antiquated. It has to change, because I can tell you right now, if there was a war in Europe, I'm not going over there to fight it. Okay, that's not going to happen.
Do you know what it should be, Mackie? It should be a blind vote. A vote without knowing. It just says Party A, Party B, Party C, and a bunch of questions are asked of you, and you answer them honestly the way you feel it should be, the answers, whatever they happen to be. Migration, taxes, whatever, right? And then as a result, the party that most favors you and your ideals gets your vote.
Yeah.
So that it would take all the money out of it. There would be no more money in politics, because I think donations cause corruption. They just cause it. Directly cause it. There's proof already. And if that was the way it was, then people would be wanting to make policies that satisfied the people, right? Because we're voting for them. Other than that, what they do is they have this hard line, and some people respect people who are, full of their own being. I was going to say full of themselves, but that'll do. Full of themselves, they're autocratic, and people go, you tell us, Quimby, right? You tell us what we're supposed to do. And some people want that. And that leader can get voted out. You can get a, Wimpy up there, Mr. Wimpy. And he may not have any of those qualities, but now he's heading the party that you liked before. Well, now they're not going to do anything you voted for. What? I think it should be policy driven. And if you don't make your policies, the other people get in. Sort of like the shifting of the ball during a penalty in a soccer match or a football match, right? You had your count. It's fourth down. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. No, you lost it again. The other people get the ball. Why not?
Yeah.
Right? But what gives stability to all the other nations? Is it our terrible political system, the Westminster system of voting, right? Does that give the other nations who have the same system enough credibility in us? Do we build credibility by having a lame voting system, a system that doesn't support any real change? Is that what it is? Right? Because China right now is taking, I'm going to use the same reference, taking the ball and running with it. They've got an autocracy for the rest of the guy's life as long as he wants to keep ruling, right? That's a new change. They've got the petro yuan now, yuan. I don't know how to pronounce it, to be honest. And what are they doing? They don't care now. They've got enough population not to care about anyone else on the planet. So, is that what we're supposed to be? Maybe we should be voting in dictators again. So we have a real stance in the world economy, Mackie.
The Greeks, the Greek city-states 2,500 years ago, they knew when they got into trouble, they would appoint a tyrant for life. Now, a tyrant for life, now today this is a negative connotation. Back then, they just appointed the most capable man, and it was a man back then, to do the job. And Pericles was probably the most famous one. He ruled for 30 years. 30 years in Athens. And his 30 years, the Periclean rule, saw Athens at its height in every possible aspect. Economically, public works, from a social achievement, from a scientific, intellectual achievement. This was the best time Athens ever had. Because it wasn't a mess. It wasn't a hot mess. And they said, hey, Pericles, come on, buddy. Get us out of this. We know we did it, but come on. And he said, yeah, all right, okay, let's do it. And so he was appointed for life. And like I said, for 30 years, he focused on Athens. Its public works, its economy, its ships, trade. And it was great. Now, do we need this again? Excuse me. I would say it probably is. We need something like that. We need strong leadership. We need a vision for the future. And this is not just in Australia. I think we're talking about the world. I think China actually has a good vision, right? There's some countries in the world which have a good vision. It's Switzerland, I think Canada, I think Singapore. I said China already, right? I think those countries, they probably have a better vision than most. Wherever you've got democracy, there is no real vision. Not really. It is usually about just the party staying in power. The party, of course, driven by individuals, which we're seeing in Australia. It's like it's ridiculous, really, if you think about it. But other parties are the same. So, in other countries in the world are the same as well. So democracy, in the words of Ken Brockman, just doesn't work. And Dave made a good point. He's just pinged me on Skype. Big business is flourishing in this environment, right? Because the politicians, and they're politicians, not statesmen or stateswomen, they're politicians, are really more so interested in their own survival and their own wealth and comfort. They let all this happen. So the corporations, which are now multinational across the globe, they get away with, well, pretty much anything, really. And that includes here in Australia, right? Recently there have been some, revelations around banking scandals and so forth. But you know what? That's hot. That's hot news for a few months, maybe even a couple of years. After that, people will just do what they do, right? They'll just fall right back into the old routines because nothing actually changes, because there's no will, because the system doesn't change. We're not changing the root cause of our problems. We're not doing anything about it. We do some cosmetics around the side of it. It's like you have a tree, right? The tree is actually dying. Inside it's rotting. And that's what do you do? Oh, you cut its leaves. You plant a few flowers around its base.
You water it.
You water it, sure. Some blood and bone if you want it, right? It's not going to cure the tree. It's dying. It's rotten on the inside. There's nothing you can do. Cut it down, plant a new tree, okay? But clearly we don't want to do that, and every single fiber of every single person that has anything vested in the system is geared toward perpetuating that system. These systems we live in are completely self-sustaining, unless someone comes along and changes them. Now, there are two ways this change can happen. One is a concerted effort from the inside. People actually realize, hey, this isn't working, let's do something. That's my preferred change, because that's usually the least disruptive, right? But change from within, that's a good thing. What is most likely to happen, though, it'll be change from the outside that's brought about by something. Okay? So, I know we're coming up to the hour. So I do appreciate everybody listening. And do remember that this is listener-funded radio. So if you've got a couple of bucks to spare, please go to the homepage, and there's the music, and try to donate. Listener-funded radio. And back after the break with Immortality.
Immortality.
And freedomslips.com, its staff or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back back with David Mackey's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com on the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5.95 per month. Now, I'd like to say hello to all of the new listeners we have today. Anyone who's followed us, liked us, or subscribed to our work. We're glad you're on board, and we hope the transition from normality in your little triangle of home workshops, and you don't want to know anything outside of that, to a larger world. You're taking your first steps into a larger world. Thank you very much for being part of this and inviting us into your lives. This is show number 338. And we'll be talking about immortality. And hopefully
8:30 and 300. And hopefully.
And hopefully it is 8:30 and 300. And hopefully you'll learn something from this.
Learning. Look, every day for me is a good day. I'm learning something every day. It's awesome. But today hopefully you can learn something as well. We are going to talk about immortality and extreme longevity, because the two are interchangeable. So if you're immortal, that's good. It doesn't mean you're safe from accidents, all right? Those things can happen, usually in the home, so be careful. So extreme longevity. We've touched on this in the past. Like I said, this was show number 6 for us. So long ago. And I looked at the original show notes. They were very short, more suggestions than notes, and like street signs in India. And 156. It's true.
Even road markings.
It's suggesting only. Wait, yeah, sure you can. 156, which was 150 shows later, and now 338, 182 shows after the last time we spoke about immortality specifically. Now, in 1786, this is true, I'm not making this up, the average life expectancy was just 24 years. 100 years later, in 1886, it doubled to 48. And right now, or I should say when this article was written about, I want to say maybe 10, 15 years ago, the life expectancy for a newborn was about 76 years. We're talking about the Western world now, like America, Australia, Europe. It is now moving toward the 80s. So we're having an aging population, and that's a problem on many fronts. One of them, of course, being that the aging population means that there won't be enough people left alive to pay the pension or to pay sufficient taxes to pay for the pensions. Hence, we see a lot of interesting policies, and also the increase of the pension age in Russia now for the first time significantly, which the Russian people didn't like. So that was very interesting. That was raised significantly recently, but it's being raised because, as I said, there is there's an increase in the age of the population, which then, of course, as you get older, also leads to a massive increase, as Dave points out, in medical costs. However, with recent discoveries in biology, and not just biology, but many other scientific areas as well as biology, many scientists are predicting that the life expectancy will continue well into triple digits. In fact, if they are correct, and we're going to discuss this in some detail, humans shouldn't have to die at all. Full stop. Just very briefly, and Dave, please chime in at any time if you will. We believe, the shiny side out that is, that we are the children of the Adamu. Well, or more correctly, the race that came after the Adamu. The Adamu being the first human beings to be created by the Anunnaki in response to the plight or plea of the Igigi. And we spent much time on this recently. So one of the telling things about us is that we no longer live as long as they did in the past. Yeah? So the Old Testament folk, pre-flood, are the Adamu. Okay, pre-flood. Post-flood, that's us. Call us whatever you want. The ones that came after Adamu. And we have a kill switch. That kill switch comes in the form of aging. And we know now, with some certainty, scientifically speaking, why we age. And we're going to discuss this in detail as well. But it is something that I believe very strongly is built into us on purpose to keep our life expectancy below or around 100 years, rather than thousands or tens or even hundreds of thousands of years. Go ahead.
The Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki's design of our life expectancy to have been 120 years.
Yeah.
From being immortal down to 120 years. Now that's an extraordinary number, given that back then you didn't get anywhere near it.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Correct. And you know what they also did for us? They gave us the common cold. There's an affliction that's described in one of the epics we shared with you last time, where they couldn't bear the noise anymore. The gods, the Anunnaki, said, "Oh man, I know we made those people to dig, the canals and all that, but
boy, don't they just go on."
Right? So they gave us what I believe is the common cold. There's a very specific affliction that's described. And after some protests, they gave us the cure for the common cold, which of course we no longer have. So I think it's either the flu or the common cold. They decided to expose us to back then, which shut us up, which was good. Now, there's this the next section. We're going to take you, and we're going to take this in turn. We're going to discuss today's view, or today's views, in fact, on immortality. This is a very interesting article that is fairly recent, and I think we're going to share that with you at this point. Peter Thiel, you probably know him, the billionaire co-founder of PayPal, plans to live to be 120. Compared with some other tech billionaires, he doesn't seem particularly ambitious. Dmitry Itskov, the godfather of the Russian internet, says his goal is to live to 10,000. Larry Ellison, co-founder of Oracle, finds the notion of accepting mortality incomprehensible. And Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, hopes to someday cure death. These titans of tech aren't being ridiculous or even vainglorious. Their quests are based on real emerging science that could fundamentally change what we know about life and death in general. Now, I just want to pause here for a second. So Dave and I spoke about this 7 years ago, when the knowledge of telomeres and telomerase wasn't as widespread as it is today. There weren't that many books around, but we mentioned it to you back then. So this is now, I guess, something that is becoming a thing, and mainstream science is all over it. Okay, just remember, what we're trying to do here is to give you the cutting edge of everything that we come across, so you are well warned in advance of what might come our way. It's hard to believe, though, going back to the text, since the human quest for immortality is both ancient and littered with catastrophic failures. Around 200 BC, the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, accidentally killed himself trying to live forever. He poisoned himself by eating supposedly mortality-preventing mercury pills.
That'll do it.
Centuries, right? Centuries later, excuse me, the search for eternal life wasn't much safer. In 1492, Pope Innocent VIII died after blood transfusions from 3 healthy boys whose youth he believed he could absorb. A little closer to modern times, in 1868, America, Kentucky politician Leonard Jones ran for the U.S. presidency on the platform that he'd achieved immortality through prayer and fasting, and could give his secrets for cheating death to the public. Hooray! Later that year, Jones died of pneumonia. Dave.
Oh. Yeah, but that's funny right there. I don't care who you are, that's funny. But historical precedence hasn't dissuaded some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley. Thiel, for example, has given $3.5 million to the Methuselah Foundation. That's really funny. Aubrey de Grey, Methuselah's co-founder, says the non-profit's main research initiative, named Strategies for Engineered Negligible Senescence, SENS for short, is devoted to finding drugs that cure 7 types of age-related damage, which are loss of cells, excessive cell division, yeah, because I hate it when my cells divide, oh my goodness, inadequate cell death, that's like science, don't use science, garbage inside the cell, garbage outside the cell, mutations in mitochondria, and cross-linking of the extracellular matrix. If they all sound a little bit pseudoscience-y, well, let's just read on. The idea that the human body, being a machine, has a structure that determines all aspects of its function, including its chance of falling apart anytime soon. So if we can restore that structure at the molecular and cellular level, then we will restore function too. So we will have comprehensively rejuvenated the body. Except for my mistake, that's a quote. But SENS, which has an annual operating budget of $5 million, is puny compared with Brin-led Project Calico, Google's attempt to cure death, which is planning to pump billions into a partnership with pharmaceutical giant AbbVie. Google is notoriously secretive, though, but it's rumoured to be building a drug to mimic FOXO3, a gene associated with exceptional lifespan. Then there's the Glenn Foundation for Medical Research, the granddaddy of modern anti-aging initiatives, started by venture capitalist, there's always got to be a venture capitalist in there somewhere, Paul F. Glenn, all the way back in 1965. But since 2007, the foundation has distributed annual Glenn Awards of $60,000 grants to independent researchers doing promising work on aging. Or probably anti-aging is probably the work they've been doing it on. So the Glenn Foundation also works to kickstart anti-aging initiatives within large institutions. It began at Harvard, and then we sought out MIT, and then the Salk Institute, and then the Mayo Clinic, says Mark R. Collins, spokesman for the Glenn Foundation, and he explains, and it puts more than $1 million per year towards grants by the American Federation for Aging Research, a charitable foundation dedicated to age-related disease. Mackie. Anytime, Mackie? No Mackies? All right. The Glenn Foundation also works closely with the Ellison Medical Foundation, a far younger institution founded all the way back in 1997. Ellison's Passion Project gives out hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants each year to scholars pursuing research on and remedies for aging. Their decision to fund independent research, as opposed to creating grandiose in-house programs, may be paying off. Relatively modest research projects funded by Ellison and Glenn appear to be developing a veritable means to stave off old age, for lab mice, that is. The tantalizing question, can those lab results be replicated in humans?
Indeed. Sorry, I was on mute. But yeah, look. So this is stuff that is happening right now. It's been happening for some time, and obviously, and I think that when we first aired this, the question I asked was, well, let's say you're powerful. Let's say you've got all the money in the world, and in fact, it's a really interesting thing that was raised in the movie Jupiter Ascending, which I enjoyed very much, and not many people did, but I like that movie by the Coen brothers, who also gave us The Matrix, by the way. Anyway, so the question is, once you've got all of that, all the power and all the money and all the whatever you want, what is left? What else could you possibly want? The answer is time.
Immortality.
What you want. You want time. You want more time to enjoy it all. You want more time to explore it. I mean, you want more time to do whatever it takes to do it. But you don't just want time. You want to be healthy, right? It's no good being 10,000 years old and looking it, right? That's no good. You should moisturize there, my friend. So you really have to be healthy and well. So that's really the key here. If you want immortality, you need to arrest the aging process. That's the key. Or even, if you can, reverse it. And we're going to talk about the reversal of the aging process later on in the show as well. Not today, but during the show cycle. So this is what you want. You want to be young, healthy, mentally competent, and undying. That's really what you would want. And because we're doing this today, so there are people actively doing this. So that's a thing, okay? It's a reality. Why wouldn't you have done the same in the past? And we've mentioned a few examples here of people that tried it in the past. We'll mention a few more trying to achieve immortality, and then some that may have achieved immortality. But the point is, if we had a civilization like ours or similar to ours, having achieved a similar level of technology or higher even, or maybe a little lower or somewhat different even, right? Wouldn't the same concerns still be true? Wouldn't we still be human beings wanting the same things, meaning, a longer life? And the answer is yes, we would. Yes, we would. And no matter what the prehistory holds, no matter what role the Anunnaki played or how they were us or made us, we were made in the image, or whatever else happened, right? We carry some of the DNA. It would have always been that, you want to live forever. And in fact, we know that the gods all lived forever. All the gods lived forever. That's why they were gods, right? And sometimes they would make people into gods or demigods and make them live forever. So we're hearing all these stories. So my contention here is that, in fact, in the past, we have achieved immortality. And these are the stories that I've handed down to us of the Anunnaki, of other gods, of great heroes, whatever it is. And I contend as well that these immortals have been with us for a very long time indeed. In the minority, yes, and I'm not saying that they're invulnerable, right? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they have found a way not to age and stay healthy in body and in mind. But I guess an accident, something could kill them too. They might be hard to kill, I don't know, right? But I do believe that the immortals are vulnerable that way. Again, because of the lore, the ancient stories that we're being told of the wars that happened between the gods, and the Titans and others. Mm-hmm. But Dave, aging, what happens in aging, right? I mean, we know it, or we understand it a lot better now than we ever did.
You're absolutely right. So the aging typically is described as flawed cell divisions. And what does that mean? Because, to be honest, if your cell divisions occurred without fault, we wouldn't age. So what is occurring in this cell division which is causing a flaw? And this was discovered, and to be honest, it came as quite a surprise. Now, the mitochondrial DNA, think about this. Just going to say it, and then I'll go into the text. The mitochondrial DNA reduces in length for every division. And there's a little bit at the end, I won't describe it now, but a little bit at the end which it's considered sacrificial. So after about 30 of these cell divisions or more, you've eaten up all that sacrificial DNA, and now you're going to start going into the real DNA, and you're losing something integral. And the faulty division occurs because say the error correction is no longer active, that sacrificial DNA no longer exists, and now you're starting to degrade your DNA. And this is the problem. That's the only reason you age. The only one. Now, we create a chemical inside us as we grow, and then it turns off, and then it turns back on again momentarily, and then it's pretty much off for the rest of our lives. And that chemical regrows the sacrificial mitochondrial DNA, or the telomeres. Now, telomerase is the chemical that they've described it as being that name. Unfortunately, it's not being produced all the time. That's a shame. So going back to the text, I mean, we have stem cells, and this is a cell which has a very good purpose in the body. Now, if you place a stem cell next to a missing cell, so you've cut a cell out of the body and you put a stem cell in there, what it does, it associates itself with its positional characteristics and becomes the cell of that type for that position, which is really quite handy. So if you, in all intents and purposes, you should be able to cut your finger off, dip your finger into stem cells, and it should regrow that finger back. It doesn't at the moment, but it should be able to do that. And there are some creatures who can grow limbs back. So they've got the ability to do that. And we've now created a stem cell from a human fat tissue cell, which is actually pretty unique. So, those Kardashians are going to live forever. That was a joke.
Oh my God.
That is just terrible.
No, that's not it. I think that's absolutely true, unfortunately. But go on.
Yeah, and they're the voting base. Anyway, so look, what does personal immortality mean for everybody? Mekki.
So look, I think what human beings crave is immortality of some form or description. Now, personal immortality, rather than actual, virtual immortality. So virtual immortality is immortality that was achieved either through great works or unforgettable deeds, be they good or bad, like Mozart, Hitler, Plato, Attila the Hun, and so forth, right? We remember these people, right? Now, they're no longer alive, for the most part, we think, but certainly they have lived on. So that's what I call virtual immortality, right? And you can achieve that. And so people have what kind of thing will I leave for my descendants to know about? It's what Russell Crowe said in the movie the Gladiator. What we do today will echo through eternity, right? So great deeds. And then there's a personal immortality, which is really what we're talking about here. So you yourself will actually become immortal. Not your reputation, not what you leave behind, but you will live forever. Right? That's really the key thing here. And as I said, today we're closer than ever to achieving that immortality. Now, there are various problems with achieving immortality, of course, on a large scale. One being, of course, the resources. We're living on a planet with finite resources. There it is, right? That's it. Unless we go into space or find some other, way of sustaining ourselves, it'll be very difficult for everybody to become immortal overnight. Because if we had 7 billion people becoming immortal tomorrow, within a few years, we would have 8, 9, 10, 20, 50, 100 billion people, because nobody dies anymore, at least, of old age. So that would lead to extreme situations and the eventual collapse of civilization, because the resources are all of a sudden becoming more abundant. They're the same, but the number of people is certainly increasing. So for the most part, I believe in the past, immortality was a birthright of the elite, and I'm talking about the super elite. I'm not talking about the elite that you think is the elite. Oh, well, not all of you, but the elite that we don't see. Right, not the politicians or the rich people that we are aware of. I'm talking about the hidden elite, the ominous them. I know it's spurious of me to say this, but there is a them, right? And they're hard to define because they're very slippery, guys. Now, but what do we mean by that then? It's extreme longevity that we're talking about. Really long lifespans, and not just up to like 120 years, like Dave said. But well beyond that. Extremely extended spans of life, thousands, and if we can believe some of the ancient texts, even millions of years. Now, at this point, most people will say, you're insane. That's just crazy. In fact, you're not even insane, you're just stupid. You're just stupid, Mackie, shut up. Well, again, I'd like you to think about the world not from a human perspective. And you know what I'm talking about, Dave.
Oh, the mayfly. Oh, sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah, the mayfly.
Yeah, it is. It is. Now, we are caught in thinking of everything in human terms. It's the anthropic principle. Mm-hmm. We anthropomorphize everything, meaning everything is cut down to human size. Even though everything that we have is completely arbitrary. Our measures of time, our measures of anything. This is a completely arbitrary concept, right? Even the things that we think are completely immutable are, in fact, not that. We're not even 100% sure on the speed of light. But the point I'm making is we have to stop looking at the world and thinking it has to fit into a human scheme. The mayfly lives its life in a day. In a day, that's its life in the morning, noon, and then in the evening. Let's to simplify it, that's the end, and off it goes. If it could converse with you, and you said to it, I live. Let's say you live to 100 years, which is achievable. If you don't abuse yourself too much and you don't have any unfortunate accidents. Uh-oh. Then you tell the mayfly, I live 365,000. Sorry. 365. I live 36,000 of your units. 36,000, right? So you're now 36,000 times older than any mayfly ever in existence. And the mayfly looks at you. No, that's insane. You're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. You can't be 36,000 times older than me. Yeah, I can. No, I don't think so. And then you've got trees, which are thousands of years old sometimes, right? And all of a sudden, the mayfly is talking to creatures that are 100,000 times older than it is. Okay, you understand the perspective I'm describing here? It's not all about the human perspective. Now, for the mayfly, everything happens in that day. For us, that's an extremely short span of time. For the mayfly, that's the life. Compared to an ancient redwood, we are mayflies, more or less. Okay. And certainly, if you look at geological time, we're not even the blink of an eye. So we have to step back and allow a different perspective. Do not think of what we have as a lifespan today is, in fact, the lifespan that we should have. We should live a lot longer. And you know what? This is something Dave and I discussed, and I think I might have brought it on the air as well. We are children, even when we're old. When we're 80 years old, 100 years old, 100, yeah, that's right. Yep, we are children. No wonder we have wars. No wonder we can't get along. If I look at my little children, and again to stretch an analogy here, in the sense they fight, they have disagreements, they want to have this toy, they want to have that toy. There's no reason. They just want it, so they fight. Yeah. That's what happens with children. And we actually are never given the chance to grow up. We're given the chance to grow old and tired. That's not the same as growing up. Just because you grow old and tired, and with it you become tired of violence and conflict, doesn't mean that you've grown up. Some of us grow up, surprisingly, which is amazing, right? If you think about how little time we have to grow up. But most of us don't. Our entire civilization is run by children. All the time. Okay, I believe a human being can only achieve mental and ethical and moral, adulthood or maturity once we've passed maybe 200, 300, 400, 500 years. Mm-hmm. And I mean this. I know what it sounds like. I understand it. But look at our civilizations. We are children playing in a sandbox and fighting over toys.
So Maggie, just to join this up. So if your child is 5 years old, just for maths purposes, and you're 30 years old, and and you experience the same situation as your 5-year-old, and yet with your worldly knowledge, rather than I want it, you fairly analyze the situation, decide that you don't want it as much maybe as the other person is needy, and you allow them to have it, therefore avoiding an argument, and you've, with your grace, provided the other person with the thing they wanted, right?
Correct.
Now from a human perspective, now that we're our age and we're in a world full of people who are just still behaving like 5-year-olds as a nation, imagine if we were once again 6 times older than that.
Yeah.
That's what Mecky's saying. And I think that however many hundreds of years we might have to be to then show that kind of maturity on a nation, imagine how old we'd have to be to do that from a worldly perspective.
That's completely correct. Completely correct. And look, but it's very, very important. It's very, very important to take a step back and forget everything that you think is true. Forget everything that you think is right or what you've believed. And please don't say, oh, the experts say, oh, I know for sure because. No, please step outside the box, step outside the matrix, and think for yourself, and think what would happen if we lived longer, because we could live longer. The only thing that's killing us, unless I said, you've got an accident, the only thing that's killing us is the switching of telomerase and the subsequent shortening of the telomeres. That's what makes us age. Let's say you didn't age. Think about that. Now, of course, there are, and we want to, just as a bit of fun, we want to talk about these. I'll do the first, and Dave can do the second. What are the longest lived human beings that we know of? Well, scientifically accepted is Jean-Louis Calment, and she was born February 21, 1875, and she died August 4th, 1997. And she was a French super centenarian, or what's called a super centenarian, who had the longest confirmed human lifespan in history, confirmed. And she lived to the age of 122 years and 164 days. She lived in Arles in France.
Now, what wasn't scientifically accepted was Shirali Muslimov, 1805 to 1973, allegedly, age 168 years. Scientists believe the passport he used was his father's or grandfather's, as he displayed extremely good health for his age.
Yeah. Now, I think it's a possibility, right? I mean, of course, scientists, because they're living in the same boxes we all live, right? Unless we free ourselves, can't accept it. They cannot accept that this is a possibility. But we're getting to the point now, right? Yeah, we're getting to the point now where this is becoming an accepted possibility, because we understand the science. We understand that if we activate telomerase, we could arrest the aging process. It's not going to stop a bullet coming to your head. It's not going to stop a car hitting you in the street. It's not going to stop you drowning in a puddle of rainwater. But you will do so in good health and with a fairly youthful appearance. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. We've discussed this. Humans have been fascinated by personal immortality. Well, forever, and we all are. We all find it very difficult to accept the personal death, and that is the key reason, not the only reason, but that's the key reason we have the, I guess the I want to call it crutch, but certainly the thought or afterlife insurance of an afterlife. So we buy into the notion that we live on after death, right? It helps us deal with our personal death, which we think is inevitable. Now, I've got different views on that as well, probably to most of you, but it is understandable why somebody would want to have an afterlife, right? And ideally, one that's better than the life they're in. Makes perfect sense to me, because it's scary, because we don't know what's going to happen when you die, right? So the alternative is that you live forever, and that's great because we know what's here. Living forever is great, and that's really the great trap. The great trap the elite has fallen into, the people that are keeping us in this reality, right? And we've spoken about this at length as well, are the people that are terrified to die. Now, they have found a way to escape the rebirth cycle, I believe. They're still in the same prison as we are. They just don't get reborn and die all the time. They stay alive. They have managed personal immortality. Whereas most of us, we die, are reborn, forget everything about our lives for the most part, and start again. They do not. Imagine how much better off you were, not just by yourself. I mean, individually, you'd probably be in a worse place. But if there was a group of people that could, live that long and help each other, right, you would be in a much better position than anybody else on the planet. And that's exactly what we're seeing. That's exactly what we're seeing, okay, and have seen for a long time. Now, there's a fun aside here, Dave, if you want to take it. It's the Fountain of Youth.
So how did the legend get started? The legend of the Fountain of Youth. Well, the Fountain of Youth was a spring that Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon, according to legend, went looking for in Florida in 1513. It was said that anyone who drinks from the fountain would have his or her youth restored. Florida was thought to be the site of the Fountain of Youth because the native stories in the Caribbean of a restorative spring located north of the Bahamas. These native legends were combined with a popular story in Europe about a quest for a fountain of life. Did he find it? Well, no. And he may have never gone looking for it. Accounts of his searching for the Fountain of Youth came to us many years after Ponce de Leon, after his death, and may have been romantic additions to his story of exploration. That sounds like someone trying to deny it existed. Why a fountain, you might ask? Well, legends about healing waters abound in cultures around the world, from biblical stories of Jesus healing a man with water to legends in the Middle East and Asia of various healing springs. People who have always talked about and quested for water that will restore youth and health. These legends were taken to a peak in 16th century Europe as the tales of the exploration of the New World entered into popular culture.
That's right. And now we're coming to the tinfoil hat zone. Shiny set out. We love it. We haven't done it for a while, right? So please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside your reality suspension module at all times. And Dave, there is no
flash photography,
because you will startle the anomalies. So, Klaus Donner.
Turn off your personal reality inverters, isn't it?
Something like that. And Klaus Donner, he's a researcher, German researcher. I've got a few of his books, and some of them have been translated into English, I think. Is talking about a spring that was found in South America that contains silver in gold in nanoform, monoatomic. Yeah. We did talk about monatomic elements, or orbitally rearranged monatomic elements, and its potential health benefits in previous shows, including life extension, of course. And this water has purportedly higher healing qualities than the waters at Lourdes in France, a pilgrimage site. I'm sure you're aware of it. Thousands are healed there every year. Is that psychosomatic, or is it something else? I don't know. The show notes contain a link to a YouTube video, and I'm just about to paste it into the chat. Go to a minute 23 to hear about the spring, if you will. We do know about Lourdes, I'm sure. There is there is a spring there, and I think it's the Catholic Church that looks after it, and people are healed in it. Now, apparently, this one here in South America is more powerful than that. So these stories of fountains of youth, restorative spas, may not all be as bogus as many of us would believe. The interesting thing is this as well. All over Europe, mostly Europe, you find these spas, healing spas, deep water wells that the Romans built. And they very much believed in the restorative powers of these waters. And they are. The high mineral content and so forth is really good for you, right? And swimming in it is also good for you. So there's something to be said for that. Now, is it possible that some waters are just more potent than others? I should think yes. There's no good reason why they wouldn't be. Some things are strong, other things are stronger, and other things yet are much, much stronger. So if we do accept that some waters have, certain restorative qualities, which is a fact because you can go to these spas all over Europe, then it shouldn't be a stretch to think that some of these waters, and probably kept secret, except maybe for Lord, are much more powerful in their effect. Because ultimately, our bodies are biological machines, more or less, right? I'm not talking about our soul or psyche or whatever. I'm talking about our physical bodies. And there's no reason why you can't put them back into original good working order, right? Dave, what does history tell us about the immortality of others?
Oh, okay. So often the records are too few to determine if these people actually claimed immortality themselves or even existed. However, significant sources show they are claimed to be immortal by various religions and folk legends. Melchizedek, 18th century BC, a priest, according to some translations of Hebrews 7, passage 7:3, I think, without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, like the Son of God, he, and it mentions the person's name again, remains a priest forever. Mekki, we can do the one-on-one.
Sure. Tithonus, who in Greek mythology was granted eternal life, but not, and this is the kicker, eternal youth.
Several originally mortal men and women whom the ancient Greeks considered historical figures like Achilles, Helen, Ino, Memnon, Menelaus, and Pylus achieved physical immortality through the intervention of gods.
There you go. That's a good example of how these gods, in inverted commas, interfered and made some of us, in fact, immortal. The wandering Jew, about from the 1st century before Christ, a Jewish shoemaker, according to legend, he taunted Jesus on his way to the crucifixion, and Jesus cursed him to go on forever till I return. Thus, the wandering Jew is cursed to live until the second coming of Christ.
Wow, he'd be old now. John the Apostle, AD 6 to 101. One of Jesus's followers, some Mormons, in conjunction with their own scriptures, interpret the biblical scripture found at John 21 to 23 to mean that John will tarry or remain on earth until the second coming.
Yeah. The three Nephites between AD 34 and 35, three men described in the Book of Mormon who are given power over death in order to fulfill the desire to minister among men until Jesus comes again.
If you're a Monty Python fan, Sir Galahad. Dates for his life fall between the 2nd century and the 6th century. One of the 3 Arthurian knights to find the Holy Grail. Of them, Galahad is the only one to have achieved immortality by it.
Merlin, again linked to the Arthurian legends. Dates for his life fall between the 2nd and the 6th century as well, of course. In some accounts, Merlin is trapped by an enchantment by Nimue, and while some end with Merlin dying, in others he remains in the trap, which is variously a tomb, a cave, or a mist, indefinitely suspended.
I wonder what the US military found in that cave, Mackie.
Right?
Yeah. So Nicholas and Perenelle Flamel, 15th century AD, alchemists who were reputed in later manuscripts to have acquired immortality through the use of the Philosopher's Stone. And you could, if you're a Harry Potter fan, you know what I mean.
In fact, Nicholas Flamel was a historical figure. So, in fact, again, purported to have found the stone of the Philosopher's Stone, which gives you immortality. So that much in Harry Potter is actually based on, I don't want to say fact, but certainly on folklore. Which brings us to the last one. We're going to spend some time on him, which is the Count of Saint-Germain. Officially 1712 to 1784, so they say. And he was variously described as a courtier, an adventurer, a charlatan, an inventor, an alchemist, a pianist, a violinist, and an amateur composer. And Richard Canfray, a French magician and singer. Leon, who lived from 1940 to 83, and who claimed to be the Count of Saint-Germain, but that has, by all intents, or by all accounts of what I could find at least, been debunked. So I don't think that Richard Canfray was, in fact, the Count of Saint-Germain. But then again, he may have been, and the debunking might just be a red herring. Now, this is one of the most mysterious cases, and we spent some time on it last time as well, and this will certainly take us to the end of the show. So we will conclude today's show with the Count of Saint-Germain, and we're going to take this in turn here. The Count of Saint-Germain, again, which was meant to have been born potentially in 1712 and died February 27 in 1784. He achieved great prominence in European high society of the mid-1700s, and since then various scholars have linked him to mysticism, occultism, secret societies, and various conspiracy theories. His origins, well, we don't really know. When the man who first became known as Saint-Germain was born is unknown, although most accounts say he was born in the 1690s. A genealogy compiled by Annie Besson for her co-authored book, The Comte de Saint-Germain, The Secret of Kings, asserts that he was born the son of Francis Rákóczi II, Prince of Transylvania, in 1690. Other accounts, taken less seriously by most, say he was alive in the time of Jesus and attended the wedding of Canaan. The wedding at Canaan, that's where Jesus turned water into wine. He was also said to be present at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. What is almost unanimously agreed on, however, is that Saint-Germain became accomplished in the art of alchemy, the mystical science that strives to control the elements. A forerunner of what we today call chemistry, of course. The foremost goal of his practice was the creation of projection powder, or the elusive Philosopher's Stone, which, it was claimed, when added to the molten form of such base metals as lead, could turn them into pure silver or gold. Furthermore, this magical powder could be used in an elixir that would impart immortality on those who drank it. Now, Dave and I believe that this might be white gold powder. Countess Saint-Germain, it is believed, discovered this secret of alchemy, or potentially rediscovered it. Now, Dave, what happens next?
Okay, it appears that, is that right?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah, okay. It appears the Count of Saint Germain may have arrived on the scene in Europe as early as the 1710. At that time, he appeared to be in his mid-40s. The story goes that he always appeared this way. He seemed to never age. From 1737 to 42, he was supposedly in Persia studying alchemy. He went to Versailles in 1742, and then in 1743 he was in England for the Jacobite Revolution. He then went to Vienna to visit Frederick the Great, and then to Edinburgh in 1745. In 1755, the Count of Saint Germain went to India. This guy travelled. When he came back, he stayed in the royal chateau of Chambord in Touraine on King Louis the 15th's invitation. There he rubbed elbows with Voltaire, who appeared to be impressed by the man. The Count Saint Germain left France and went to Hague and London in 1760. In 1762, he supposedly went to Russia and was involved in a revolution. There, under the pseudonym Graf Saltykov, he later travelled to Germany and Bavaria. Mekki.
All the while maintaining a middle-aged appearance. Now, we've just covered about 50 years here, right? Or 60 years, okay? And he remained he maintained his middle-aged appearance. Count Saint-Germain died on February 27, 1784. There is a record of his death and burial. During his time in Europe, during the 1700s, the Count of Saint-Germain's acquaintances had an awful lot to say about the strange man. He was said to have had a striking appearance, especially his eyes. He was reportedly a very talented musician and composer who shared his work with Tchaikovsky and Prince Ferdinand von Lobkowitz. Two of his compositions dwell in the British Museum. One of them was written in 1745 and the other in 1760. He even performed on the harpsichord for Frederick the Great. It's a Prussian king. Count Saint-Germain was said to have knowledge of Sanskrit, Chinese, and Arabic. He also spoke Swedish, Portuguese, French, Italian, German, Spanish, and Russian flawlessly. He was a painter of some renown. The Count of Saint-Germain was also said to have some very strange habits. Some people claimed that he never ate in public, but he would drink a special tea frequently. There were also claims that he often made strange comments about his age. He would speak of times long since past as if he had been there. He reportedly told an acquaintance who had made a comment that he must be more than 100 years old that it was not impossible. Now, those who met him, and we should take this in turn, Dave, this should take us to the break. Those who met him were impressed by his many abilities and peculiarities, Dave.
He could play the violin like a virtuoso.
He was an accomplished painter.
Wherever he travelled, he set up an elaborate laboratory, presumably for his alchemy work.
He seemed to be a man of great wealth, but was not known to have any bank accounts. If it was due to his ability to transmute base metals into gold, he never performed the feat for observers.
He dined often with friends because he enjoyed their company, but was rarely seen to eat food in public. He subsisted it was said, on a diet of oatmeal.
He prescribed recipes for the removal of facial wrinkles and for dyeing hair.
There's the music. He loved jewels, and much of his clothing, included his shoes, was studded with them. Anyway,
and we'll take the rest next time.
I think we will. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week for show 339. Stay tuned for a roundtable with Jer Bear. And don't forget to donate. Take care. See you later.